Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's North East Derbyshire District Council annual council meeting. Before we go on to the first item on the agenda, I would just like to say a few words. As my year in the chair, as chair of this council, draws to a close, I would like to take this opportunity to reflect on what has truly been an honour and a privilege to serve this council and our district in an official capacity. When I first accepted the chain of office, I knew the role involved chairing the council meetings and some civic duties, but I had little knowledge or appreciation of how important it is in raising the profile of this council throughout the district and beyond. What has struck me most over the past year is just how much people genuinely appreciate the council being represented at community events, commemorations, celebrations, parades and services. That visible support matters greatly to our residents, organisations and volunteers. It has certainly been a busy and memorable year. I have had the privilege of representing the council at so many important occasions, including the pilgrimage to Crouch, the magnificent Crouch Monument, dedicated to the Sherwood Foresters, which is now the Mercia Regiment. Staveley Armed Forces Day, several remembrance services, and most recently I attended the Parachute Regiment service at Ardwick Hall, which is the birthplace of the UK Airborne Services, dating back to the Second World War, 1942, when the first training camp was established there. I was also delighted to take part in the celebrations marking 200 years since George Stephenson helped change the world through the invention and development of the steam train. A wonderful opportunity to celebrate our proud industrial heritage. There were many uplifting and enjoyable occasions throughout the year, including all the fun of the fair at the 773rd Charter Fair at Ilkeston, civic services, dinners across the county, 2 visits to Hollingwood Hub on the Chesterfield Canal, one for World Water Day, which was sponsored by the Rotary Club, where we saw the amazing work done by Aquabox, a charity that makes water filters based just up the road in Wirksworth. They are sent all over the world to natural disasters and war zones. Vital work, especially in these uncertain times. The second time was for a trip on the Madeline to see the work that has been done to extend the canal from the Staveley Basin. It is hoped the canal can eventually extend through to Renishire, which would be a great for tourism in the district and surrounding area. Eckington School were involved in fitting out the shell of the Madeline, so another district connection. And I would like to thank Councillor Beach and members of the Canal Trust for helping organise that trip. At the end of March, I was invited to visit Tupton Rugby Club, which was a bit of a trip down memory lane, as I used to play there many, many years ago. It was great to see some former teammates who are still involved with the club, and it was topped off with a great win in an important near-end season game. On the run-up to Christmas, I attended several Christmas carol services and was treated to an amazing candlelight string trio carol service thanks to the former High Sheriff of Derbyshire. In March, I saw the amazing restoration work undertaken at St John's Baptist Church in Drumfield to the restoration of the medieval stained glass window. A highly skilled work team undertook the work to this Grade 1 listed building, all brought about and achieved with the involvement of the community of Drumfield. It was also an honour to represent the council at the official opening of the Tree of Life at Ashgate Hospice, and I would recommend a visit to see the sculpture and the grounds in the hospice. On the last day of office, yesterday, I and my wife, consort Janice, represented the council at the collation and installation of the new Archdeacon of East Derbyshire at Derby Cathedral, Reverend Emma Sykes. a very special and historic service to witness, and she is looking forward to touring the parishes of North East Derbyshire. Throughout the year, I have also seen firsthand the incredible compassion and community spirit that exists across the district. Visiting food banks was both humbling and inspiring, and I know how much invaluable work is carried out quietly behind the scenes by volunteers every single day across this district, including the residents' engagement work undertaken by Ricknold Homes. Supporting my chosen charity, Macmillan Cancer Support, has been especially important to me this year. I was honoured to visit their wonderful centre at Chesterfield Royal Hospital and see firsthand the incredible care and support, compassion they provide to patients and their families during the most difficult of times. On that, the fundraising figure for the total for the year was £3,715 that will go to Macmillan Cancer Support. The fundraising events were also thoroughly enjoyable, including the charity spin bike challenge, stair climb event, and they have taught me that I'm not quite as fit as I used to be. I'd also like to thank the parish councils for their donations to the charity. Another proud moment was presenting the cheque to the 100th recipient of the council's community action grants, a reminder of the positive difference this council continues to make in supporting local groups and organisations. Of course, chairing council meetings at times has been challenging, but I am pleased to report that during the entire year I have only received one complaint, which, considering local government, I think is probably qualifies as an extending success. I also discovered that being chair comes with certain privileges and invitations. I should perhaps not say too much, but I have attended some events this year that Councillor Thacker wasn't at.
That's impossible.
I can't tell you how many times at events the former High Sheriff of Derbyshire has asked me, "Is Martin here?" Joking aside, it has been good to see Martin at several events throughout the year, undertaking his many different roles. I would like to place on record my sincere thanks to the Chair's office team for all their work throughout the year. Much of what the public see wouldn't simply not happen without the enormous amount of work done behind the scenes. My thanks must also go to the drivers who safely transported us around the district and county, often on very long days with very tight timetables. Your professionalism and good humour have been greatly appreciated. Most importantly, I would like to thank my wife for serving as my consort throughout the year. She unfortunately can't be here today because she's got to work because she's taken so many days off to do this, to do the role. She has attended countless events, supported me every step of the way, and represented the council with warmth, dignity and grace. Although I suspect she, like me, is looking forward to some downtime, and perhaps even more importantly to me, no longer spending money on clothes and outfits. Finally, I would like to thank fellow councillors, officers and everyone I have met throughout this remarkable year. It has truly been an honour to serve as chair. I leave the role with many wonderful memories, enormous respect for the communities and great pride in the work this council does. Finally, I would like to offer my warmest wishes and congratulations to the incoming chair. I know he will have a rewarding and memorable year, and I offer my full support, advice and assistance in any way I can during his term of office. Thank you very much. Right, we now move to item 1 on the agenda, which is election of the chair of the council. Councillor Lacey,
I'd like to nominate Councillor Michael Durrant.
do we have a seconder? Councillor Rouse.
Yeah, I'll second that, please.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there's any need for that, Councillor Shipman. Right, we've got a proposer and a seconder, so we'll take a vote on that, please. All those in favour, just do a show of hands, please. Right, well, we'll do it on the monitors. Right, thank you, everybody. Mark, you've been duly elected as chair of this council. Congratulations. If you'd like to step up.
Now I'll get this past my hair. Thank you, everyone. I'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is the address of gratitude to members by the newly elected chair of the council. And so firstly, I'd like to say to all members for electing me as the council, no matter how you voted. It really is an honour that I couldn't have imagined that I would have. And while some of my group worry that I talk a lot as it is, and now as chair, I'll never stop, I can say to Nigel, I'll promise I'll try not to talk too much. But I can't promise I'll succeed.
Cheers, mate.
It feels like years ago that I actually started my journey as a councillor. I came many years ago to a meeting as a resident to complain of all things potholes. There I met Councillor Barker, Gilliatt and Hartshorn. And before that I'd never considered of being a councillor or even involved in local politics. And I would certainly say I'd have never have dreamed of being chair or wearing this chair of office. But I am here now, and I can say that it has been deeply humbling and gratifying to serve the area I live in, Grasmere. And now, to be a representative of the council, to be chair for this coming year, is doubly humbling. So I want to say thank you to members from all sides of the chamber for placing your trust in me or giving me the opportunity to gain your trust. I want to say thank you to my wife, Kate, who supports me endlessly and very patiently. And I also want to thank my children, my daughters, who, as I've been councillor, have watched their dad while their evenings on my casework, while I still try to find the time to help them with their homework. They've recently started secondary school, and when they were in primary school, one actually stood and won as class councillor because she said she wanted to be like her dad. I strive, like all of us, to be a good example for our community, but I also strive to be a good example for my daughters, even though I know full well they will exceed anything I will ever do in this life. In truth, I actually only feel my life began once I became a father. Also on that note, I want to say to my girls who are possibly watching this at home, hi kids, yes, you can tell your friends that I'm chair now. I want to give my thanks to the officers as well, who have already helped me enormously in preparing for this role, particularly Sarah, Amy, Tina and Joe. I want to say their professionalism and calm guidance has already been invaluable to me, and I look forward to working with them throughout this year. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about the role of the chair. It is my intent as chair in this chamber to sit apolitically in order to support everyone here who is working for our district. I will strive to be a chair that encourages positive and robust debate that serves all residents of North East Derbyshire, and I will uphold the Constitution and maintain the dignity of this council. I think we can all agree this past year has been a challenging one, and so as we begin this new civic year, I want to briefly restate the standards we as councillors have all signed up to, the principles that guide how we conduct ourselves, how we treat one another, and how we represent our residents. First of all, on respect, we treat each other, our officers, and the public with courtesy and respect. Debate can and should be passionate, but never personal. We challenge ideas, not people. On note of our officers, they are politically neutral and impartial. They provide professional, statutory advice, and we may question and seek clarity of them, but we must never pressure or try to influence that advice. We respect their position and their role in the council. We protect the confidentiality of this council and the sensitive information that we receive, and we never use what we learn as councillors for personal advantage or to breach the trust we have been placed as councillors in this council for our residents. In conduct in public life, whether it be in this chamber or in our communities or increasingly online, we must remember our behaviour reflects on the whole council and all of our community. And lastly, in our decision making, we should come to decisions with an open mind, listening to evidence and the advice, professional advice, when it is given. Above all, we must remember and adhere to the Nolan principles, that of selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and most of all, leadership. Because these aren't just rules. They are a basis of trust. And in this chamber and across this council and with our residents, if we hold to them, we can disagree fiercely and debate robustly while still treating each other and the people we serve with dignity and respect. Now, as chair, I am particularly looking forward to representing the council at civic events across Derbyshire and beyond. Whether it's remembrance services, charity events, school visits or community celebrations, I hope to be able to visit all of your areas, whether it is parish or town council or beyond in your environments. I hope to be a positive and approachable ambassador for North East Derbyshire and this council. My aim is to show residents that their council is present, engaged and proud of the work they do and the work all of our staff at North East Derbyshire do. Moving on, I want to talk about my chosen charity for the coming year. But before that, I actually want to tell you about why this is important to me. Now, outside of being a councillor, I work in healthcare. Specifically, I work in mental health in a non-clinical role. But on a personal note, I am autistic and I have ADHD. I was only diagnosed a few years ago, 6 years ago, autistic, and I was only diagnosed as ADHD 2 years ago. I'll no shame in saying it's been a hard road, with very long waits, and once diagnosed, unlearning everything I thought I knew about myself and many assumptions I had about how others think. Like many adult diagnosed as neurodiverse, I had spent a lifetime trying to understand why some things were so hard for me and so easy for others, and some things made no sense to me that made sense to others, and vice versa, things made sense to me that made no sense to other people. I have lived with mental health struggles all my life, a mixture of anxiety, depression, and even bouts of struggling with considerations of taking my own life. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying this as a lament or a woe is me speech or anything to elicit any sort of sympathy. I am telling you this as an autistic and ADHD man, that the little of my life I've told you and my struggles are to say that I am actually one of the lucky ones as a neurodiverse adult. I'm a councillor and now elected as chair. I have a degree and I have a master's. I work in healthcare and I use that master's to improve the structures, services and strategies of our healthcare service. While I have struggled, I've actually been relatively successful in work and in life. That's not the experience of most people with neurodiversity. Only 34% of autistic adults are in work, and many of them will never be in work due to their disability. Despite that, 77% of those people with autism who are out of work say they want to work and are willing to find work and try to find work, but the world is just not set up for them to succeed or show what they can offer and what they can offer the world and succeed for all of us. Autistic adults are 9 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population. More than 80% of neurodiverse adults experience additional mental health conditions such as generalized anxiety disorder, clinical depression, to name just 2. Autistic adults, most of all, their life expectancy is between 16 and 30 years lower than the general population, with the average life expectancy being approximately 54 years old, compared to the national average of 80 years old for the general population. Children's waiting lists for diagnosis for ADHD and autism are long. And in North East Derbyshire, I can tell you that it's between 2 and 4 years of waiting, depending on what you're referred for. And for adults, that wait can be even longer. Derbyshire has some of the longest waits in the country for autism and ADHD diagnosis among adults. And there is a massive gap in capacity with our county's services. Derbyshire Healthcare Foundation Trust are commissioned to deliver only 26 assessments for autism per month, but receive approximately 96 new referrals every month. That is before discussing the lack of support, for which there can be waits that are even longer for any effective support through the normal routes. What I'm saying here is, for the most neurodiverse, autistic adults, through normal service routes, there is a long, impossible wait for diagnosis, which then, if the people receive that diagnosis, an even longer wait for support. Into this, we add the rising stigma from both politicians and the media, who frequently categorise these conditions as merely a modern trend, or being overdiagnosed, to which I would say they should know better. These narratives are dangerous, a distraction from the reality that neurodiverse people die younger and suffer without support, only to then be told they are faking it, lazy, or exaggerating. In this care graph, I am proud to say there are committed charities that support autistic and ADHD individuals, such as my chosen charity, Autism East Midlands. I've chosen them because they provided direct support to our residents that desperately need it when the statutory services fail to meet demand. Autism East Midlands have family support hubs, neuro hubs for both children and young adults, safe social spaces, accommodation and respite services for both neurodiverse individuals and their families. They have safe social spaces, and they offer employment support and training, awareness workshops, parent support, as well as youth activities for those who want to engage and succeed at life. They provide direct support and also signpost services to our local neurodiverse residents, often when the statutory cannot meet the demand. I hope, by choosing this charity, I will raise awareness and funds, and I hope to challenge the misinformation that surrounds autistic and ADHD residents and demonstrate that North East Derbyshire is a community that supports our neurodiverse residents and their families. Now, finally, I want to speak about the year ahead. This is the final year of the District Council before local government reorganisation. For those who don't know, North East Derbyshire District Council has existed for 52 years, since the 1st of April 1974. And I want to say to each of you here today, sitting as councillors, that you are the last district councillor for the area you represent, whether that's North Wingfield, Wingerworth, Tupton, or anywhere else in this district that we all love. I want you to take a moment to absorb the gravity of that. No one else will hold the title of district councillor for your area ever again. You are the last to bear the honour of representing your community as district councillors. So I ask you as chair, for this year, this final year, make it a good one. Make it robust, make it lively, make it impactful. For the betterment of our area, for our council and our staff, but most of all, for all of our residents that we have the privilege of representing. Thank you. I will now move on to item 3 of today's agenda, which it is my privilege to deliver the address of gratitude to our outgoing chair, Councillor Lee Hartshorn. Now, myself and Lee are both councillors for Grasmere, and I actually speak to him almost every day about our casework and our goings-on in the village, as possibly all of you do with your mutual councillors as well. But despite that, in this speech, I can't just say, thanks, mate, like I might say on a day-to-day. Because I work with Lee so frequently, I've seen over the past year his sheer dedication and commitment he has brought to the role of chair, ever supported by his wife and consort, Janice. It's honestly felt like every single day Lee was heading out to another civic or public event, representing this council and all of its residents. And this has been on the top of his role as chair. This has been on top of his role as chair of the planning committee, which is no small task in itself, and on his role as planning in High Peak and working throughout the district on his casework, like all councillors do. Over his time as chair, Lee has attended numerous events, I think over 50 approximately, if I'm correct, which on top of his other public duties and working full-time as an electrician is a frankly Herculean effort to keep up with. Councillor Hartshorn has represented North East Derbyshire District Council across the whole of Derbyshire and beyond, from parish council remembrance services in Wingerworth to food bank visits across the district, such as in Claycross, Eckington or Homewood, from civic dinners across the county to national events such as even going to Buckingham Palace to represent North East Derbyshire District Council. Wherever he has gone, he has represented this council with dedication and dignity, promoting the hard work of our authority to one and all. I want to say thank you to Councillor Hartshorn for his fundraising of his chosen charity, Macmillan. Before mental health, I used to work with cancer, and as someone who's seen the devastating impact of cancer, this was a fantastic choice, because nearly 1 in 2 people in the UK will experience cancer in their lifetime, and it remains one of the leading causes of death for adults in North East Derbyshire. Councillor Hartshorn, your dedication to raising funds for such a worthy cause should be applauded. Councillor Hartshorn has worked tremendously hard throughout this past year, and in truth, when it actually came time for choosing a new chair, I'd initially not considered myself forward, simply because Lee's dedication had proved so daunting to follow. My mind, however, was changed, and it was changed by Lee, and it reminded me of that time I first met as a resident. As I said, I went along to talk about potholes. As I laid out my issues and my ideas for the roads in Grasmere, of what I thought could be done, Lee didn't miss the opportunity to ask that fateful question. Have you considered standing as a councillor? And because of Lee's engagement, I first stood and still sit as a parish councillor, and emboldened me, again, have you considered standing as a district councillor, which I did, and now I end up in this chair today, because these years later, it seems Lee once again asked me that fateful question, have you considered standing? And now I'm here as chair of the council. So I can only express my immense personal gratitude to Councillor Hartshorn for offering me his continued advice and support as I take on this role. I think we can all agree this year has been challenging, and I want to express, on behalf of the council, our gratitude and congratulate him on his dedication to the authority and his role in the chair. I hope that Lee leaves the role knowing just how deeply his services are appreciated. by this council and by our communities and by all of those he has represented with such dignity over the past year. Lee, you leave this office with dignity and pride and with the thanks of everyone here. Thank you. I think we may now have... Yes.
Thank you. From there, I can't see.
You're very welcome. I'll now move on to item 4, apologies for absence.
Can I, Chair, before you do that,
Yes.
I just want to, congratulate you on being elected Chair first of all, but I also want to break your rule about being personal, because I'd like to be personal about Councillor Hartshorn for a moment.
Go ahead.
Just to echo some of the comments you've just made to Councillor Hartshorn, I think being chair of this council is important for various reasons. It's not just a civic role, it's an ambassadorial role. And as you said, Councillor Hartshorn has been across the whole of Derbyshire, networking with other civic leaders, being out and about representing North East Derbyshire in a fantastic way. His support for various charities, it's not just about raising money for his own chosen charity during the year, it's also that being obviously there for other charities to show that their work is appreciated, and that includes the food banks that you've mentioned, but also charities that are having their own challenges this year, such as Ashgate Hospice, and I know they appreciated Councillor Hartshorn and Janice's presence at the launch for the Tree of Life. I know it was throwing down that day, but they actually helped to make it a very positive event. And the support for the veterans community has also been essential. There are so many veterans in North East Derbyshire, some of them just getting on about their business and trying to work within their hubs and so on. So there's the ceremonial aspects that Councillor Hartshorn's shared with us, but there's also the conversations that happen on a one-to-one basis that I know has been appreciated by a number of veterans. And I think it's those personal qualities, that sense of humour, that willingness to have a conversation, to listen to people that Councillor Hartshorn's brought to this role that has meant that he's engaged so positively with local residents. And I think some of that is about reconnecting with people from his own childhood. I actually witnessed the chance meeting between Councillor Hartshorn and Mr Alan Bostock, and a conversation that went down memory lane that perhaps we won't share, Councillor Hartshorn, but it involves Councillor Hartshorn coming off second best. But I think it's just been brilliant to see Councillor Hartshorn out and about with Janice, who's been an absolutely brilliant consort. She's brought her own personal qualities to the role and has been very popular with other civic leaders and those that she's come into contact with. And I know that with their own brand of sartorial elegance and the way that they've been out and about representing this North East Derbyshire district, that they have done us proud. And I can say that, having witnessed it with my own eyes on numerous occasions, and I think what Richard Fitzherbert was doing was asking if I was present so that he could be protected, because on one occasion I think Councillor Hartshorn and Janice rammed him several times on Dodgem cars at the Charter Fair. So, but they've made lots of friends. They've done us proud, as I've said, and I think they should be congratulated. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tony Lacy.
Apologies for absence.
Yes, we can move on to apologies for absence now.
I've got apologies from Councillor Morley, Smith, Cornwell and Cheetham.
Thank you, Councillor Dale.
Yeah, really just to echo Councillor Thacker's remarks. I think the thing I would say about Lee's term as chair has been that he's really got stuck in. He got stuck into a lot of things. It's been fantastic to see him lots of events in Dronfield. I think personal highlight of my year was seeing Lee in his full lycras, accompanying me on the spin-a-thon in Dronfield Leisure Centre. So yeah, really well done to Lee. Fantastic charity as well, Macmillan. I know it's close to a lot of people's hearts, but it certainly is mine. So well done, Lee, and thank you very much for all that you've done for the district this past year. In terms of apologies from my group, it's and also congratulations yourself, Chair, on your election as Chair of the authority. Apologies from my group is Councillor Charlotte Cupit, Stephen Clough, Peter Elliott, Michelle Evans, Lillian Dayton and Pat Ancliffe. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Just to say, Councillor David Cheetham is on his way. He left work over 2 hours ago. He's in traffic, but he is on his way.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Adkins Stringer.
Thank you. Just apologies for absence from Councillor Weatherall, and thanks to Councillor Hartshorn, and congratulations to yourself, Councillor Durant, as well.
Thank you very much. Yes. Moving on now to. Did you want to?
Could just for the
Yes.
record, Lee Hicken is unavailable for the meeting because he's on training this week.
Thank you very much.
Go on.
Any more? Nope. No apologies for absence. No more. Thank you.
Tell him I said that.
Moving on to item 5, declaration of interests. Are there any declarations from members in respect to any items on today's agenda, the annual meeting agenda? No? Thank you. Moving on to item 6. We now have the minutes for the council held on the 2nd of March. Is there a mover for these minutes?
Chair,
Sorry. Yes.
it's not a mover, it's just to add that I did convey my apologies to that meeting and they have not been recorded. And if you want to check, if you are one of the thousands of people who watch on live stream, you'll see that my apologies were conveyed on that occasion. So there's evidence that I did present them. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, sorry. Oh, go on, Tom.
Councillor Lacey.
I move them, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second with those amendments.
Thank you. I'll now call for a vote. Show of hands, if everyone's happy with that. Yeah, I think we can say that that's passed. Moving on to item 7. Sorry, I'm getting used to these glasses still. It is now time for us to appoint Vice Chair for the next year. Do I have any nominations? Councillor Hartshorn.
I nominate Councillor Carol Lacey.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tony Lacey? Yep. Do we have any other nominations? I will then now, the motion has been moved and seconded, so I will now put this to a vote. Can I just see a show of hands initially? Yeah, I think we can pass that then. So that motion has carried. Councillor Carol Lacey, would you like to come up to the front and take your seat, please?
Thank you. If you can help me.
Yes.
I'll have a go. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 8, the composition of the council. These are the leaders' appointments, so I invite Councillor Nigel Barker to speak.
Yeah, can I move those that are printed in the papers, please?
Thank you very much, Councillor Barker. With that, we now move on to item 9, proportionality of the council and appointment to the committees. A document has been placed on your desk with the nominations received so far. I'll ask our Assistant Director of Governance and and Monitoring Officer to introduce this item. So I'll pass over to Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. The report presents the figures for proportionality of the parties following recent changes in the opposition parties. It outlines the statutory rules that must be complied with, and following that we've had discussions with all the party leaders, and within the figures shown in the report we have tried to reach agreement on the allocations to meet the party leaders' wishes. What is in the report is the best fit that can be achieved. The recommendations are on page 3 of the report in the supplementary pack and include a recommendation that I am given delegated power to resolve any appointments after today with the party leaders, should there be any. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. We have questions for this, I assume. So if anyone has any questions, I will first pass over to Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to apologise for an error on my part. I sent an earlier version to Amy that was incorrect. So if I could please replace Councillor Neil Baker for Councillor Martin Thacker on the Services Scrutiny Committee. I'll send an updated version at the end, Amy, if that's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll now put this to a vote.
We need a mover and seconder.
We need a mover and seconder actually first.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yes.
I'll move with the, I've not seen the completed one with all the bills feeded. I'll be interested. But I'll move that.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will now put that to a vote. Could I see a show of hands initially? Just in case. Yep, I think we can pass that on that. With that, we'll now move on to item 10, the appointment of chairs and vice chairs of the various committees for the year. The persons nominated are set out in the table that has been circulated. Are there any further nominations? Sorry, one moment. Thank you. Are there any further nominations? Yes, Councillor Dale.
Chair, sorry, my error, but if we could please replace for the Services Scrutiny Committee Vice Chair from Richard Spooner to Martin Thacker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else from members before I put that to a vote? I assume, Sarah, that we can put it to an amended vote with Councillor Dale's recommendations.
Indeed, yeah.
Excellent. So this.
We've got a mover and seconder.
Do we
Yeah,
have
I'll move the printed thing.
You'll second, Councillor Dale. Thank you very much. I'll now put that to a vote then, please. Can we just have a show of hands initially? Yep, fantastic. Thank you very much, members. Now move on to item 11, schedule of meetings. This is a report of the monitoring officer, so anything you have to say to Sarah before we are asked to improve this. Do any of the members here have any questions to address to officers before we move this? No? Okay, I will ask for a mover and a seconder then, please.
Again, can I move the timetable as, or whatever, calendar as printed?
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Do I have a seconder?
Can I second that, Chair?
Fantastic, thank you. I'll now put that to a vote, but I can just do a vote of hands again. Yep, I think we're quite happy to say that that's passed. Moving on to item 12, the appointment of outside bodies. The proposed appointments have been circulated on your desks. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? Councillor Barker, yes.
Oh, that will have from last time. I would just move what's, again, what's printed there. I suppose I should let anybody, does anyone want to change it there? I'll move that as printed.
I'll second that, Chair.
So we've had a mover and seconder to take it as read. Can I take a quick show of hands? Just to see. Yep. I feel I'm happy to take that as passed. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes, because I'm looking to see the show of hands. If there's a massive, clear majority of show of hands, Councillor Shipman, if you would like this to go to a digital vote, I'm more than happy to do a digital vote.
That's fine. Do that.
Yep, absolutely. I'm more than happy to do that for you, Councillor Shipman. So, votes against? Nope. And abstentions? Thank you. Moving on to item 13, the review of the Council's constitution. A link to this was included in the report. This is a report of the Assistant Director of Governance and Monitoring Officer, so I'd like to invite Sarah to explain briefly what changes have been made.
Thank you, Chair. The Standards Committee has been carrying out its annual review of the Council's constitution, and in addition I've carried out a housekeeping report on the constitution, changing titles, etc. The table starting on page 46 of your pack outlines the proposed changes, many of which are for clarification. I am happy to answer any questions, but I don't know if the Chair of Standards Committee would like to come in at this point. Chair?
Councillor Gilliott?
Chair, I don't know anything to add. These are just relatively minor changes, all on officer advice, really. The planning officer made some suggestions with regards to the planning changes. Others are just to clarify issues that have arisen during the course of the year to make sure that the Constitution actually reflects what the law says. The law tells us what we have to do. The Constitution says how we should do it. And on one or two occasions it wasn't clear. And that's, hopefully these changes make it clear. And in particular, it makes it clear that the ruling on most of these issues where it has to be, where there has to be an officer ruling, that position lies with the monitoring officer, and her decision is final on that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. There's just 2 points on these. Nothing wrong in principle with what's proposed. One was what I think is an error. The item on Council Procedure Rules 10, motions on notice. The proposed change and reasons suggest that we're going to move to a situation where the motion is required to be submitted by 2 councillors, which I think is sensible. But when you look at the final version of the proposed wording, it doesn't seem to reflect that. It doesn't seem to reference anywhere in there that a motion must be seconded as well on paper. I couldn't find it when I read that bit. So that's. I just wonder whether there's an error in that and it's not been updated on the sheet.
Sarah, you can come in and comment on that, please.
My apologies. The Standards Committee did actually ask for that to be removed, so it shouldn't be here at all.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Gilliott, did you want to come in? Fantastic. So,
was there another point, Chair?
There was just one other point as well, Chair. Thank you. In relation to motion, so point 11, motions and amendments without notice, there's a reference to an additional kind of paragraph around alternative budget proposals. Again, nothing wrong with that. However, our group wondered whether it could be clearer within the wording of the Constitution that members of opposition groups would be entitled to a degree of support from finance officers in terms of helping us to understand and then formulate options and proposals from the, for an alternative budget. I think that's pretty consistent with what most other councils do. So it's just if it could be reflected in that wording a little bit.
Yeah, I think Chair Sanders wants to come in.
Yes.
My only issue would be, I don't think it should be in the Constitution. I think it should just be as of right. I take it you will get that anyway for all opposition groups.
Could we ensure that Councillor Gilliott's microphone is on, please? Thank you.
It's my experience that it's elsewhere, and if it's not happening here, then it should happen here.
Thank you. Then, I believe with those changes, we're happy to. Yeah, we will. So we will now require a mover and seconder after that conversation.
I'm happy to move it.
Move, and do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Barker, seconder. Can I just initially have a show of hands?
Chair?
Yes?
Just for clarity, because I only kind of part caught what the monitoring officer said, is this, like Council Procedure Rules 10 motions on notice, is that actually scrapped from this?
No.
Sarah, if you would like to come in and clarify?
No, not at all. It was a reference to requiring the seconder to be named that was scrapped. The rest is still there.
Thank you. With that, I would like to put this to a vote. We have a mover and a seconder. Can I initially have a show of hands in favour? Against? And abstentions? That's passed. So, moving on. Sorry, fighting with my paperwork. So, item 14, scheme of delegation for the year. Sarah, could you please run through the report that you will have, councillors, you will have an opportunity to ask any questions or to speak on it after Sarah has gone through this.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't planning to go through this in detail. It's here before you because as a matter of constitution and I think as a matter of law, you are required to prove it each year. It's certainly good practice, so it's explicitly in front of you for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any questions before we move on to a mover and seconder? Nope. Can I have a mover, please?
Yeah, I'll move that.
And could I have a seconder, please?
Second that, Chair.
Thank you. Could I have a show of hands for in favour? You have a point of order, do you? No, you wanted to speak of it. Of course, come in. Push the button, please. Yeah, I can't see your name.
Cheers, Chair. Just under the scheme of delegation where it says officers must keep members informed of stuff that's happening in their ward, over the last couple of years, really, I've found that stuff that happens in our ward, we don't get notified, but there were an issue not 4 weeks ago, about the development in Tupton. Mm-hmm. That only became knowledge to me because I randomly fell onto it when I was looking at the Cabinet report. Mm. And it's these sort of things which I would expect ward members to be told about, and it just doesn't seem to happen. Same with the traffic lights at the end of Mill Lane. Mm. That, again, wasn't something that ward members were updated on and kept updated when things were happening. And that's right in the middle of my ward. So it would be nice if officers could obviously take that point away and make sure that all ward members are informed when things are happening under delegated powers within their ward, if possible.
Certainly, we'll happily take that suggestion forward, whatever it is. But this is the delegation scheme, so this is specifically on you being informed in relation to delegated decisions rather than, as that was, cabinet decision.
Thank you. Unless there's any more questions, I will move that. We already had a mover and a seconder, so I just asked initially for a show of hands in favour. Against? Abstentions? Thank you. Item 15 is urgency rules, the operation of urgency rules and threshold for key decisions. I'll ask Councillor Barker to introduce this report.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just before I move to recommendations, I think I ought to make a couple of points for clarification that this is a technical report about compliance with certain rules in the Constitution. It's therefore about the reasons for the use of the rules in relation to the matters listed, and it's not about the decisions themselves. The report is about reaffirming the existing key decision levels for the next corporate year. The Constitution rules require that any matter above the key decision level is advertised on the forward plan 28 days in advance of the meeting or decision being taken. There are statutory provisions for where a 28-day notice cannot be achieved. One of these, the special agency provision in Rule 9 of Access to Information Rules, requires me to report annually to the Council when it's been used. Paragraph 2.1 lists the cases where the special agency provisions have been used over the last year. The reasons for the provisions is given in each case. A number relates to contracts, and I would remind members we have been implementing the Procurement Act of 2023 and the changes it has brought. There are some occasions when it's necessary to waive the potential for scrutiny calling. The reasons for the agency must be documented and why they to justify this. Paragraph 2.2 outlines the provision in the scrutiny rules and lists the cases where this has been used. Some of them, are not surprisingly, are in the same as paragraph 2.1. The final element is the key decision levels, and in this paper it's proposed that these remain the same for the forthcoming year. With all that in mind, can I formally move the recommendations in 1, 2 and 3 in the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Do we have a seconder for that?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any questions or anyone else wish to speak on this item before we move to a vote? Nope. If that is everyone, I shall move a vote to this item. Can I see all those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. That has passed. Item 16, urgent announcements. I actually have one urgent announcement today, and I would like to pass it over now to Councillor Lee Hartshorn. Councillor Hartshorn.
Thank you, Chair. All it is basically I'm not going to be at planning tomorrow. because it's, which everyone knows I chair the planning committee. But unfortunately the application before them I've had to register an interest, so I won't be there. But tomorrow we will be Adrian Kirkham's last day in the committee chamber. So I'd like to offer my gratitude to him for all the assistance he's given me throughout the years, especially as since I've been chair of the planning committee. And I'd like to wish him all the best for the future. His calm professionalism throughout all the meetings and throughout his conduct really is amazing. Is unflappable. And I find that a really good trait to have when you're part of the planning team. So I'd like to just wish him every good health and all the best for the future in his retirement.
Well done.
Councillor Barker, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think Adrian's been here longer than I have, and that's saying something. He's been a big help to me with various planning applications over a long period of time, and like Lee's just said, I think how he keeps his cool in some of them planning meetings, I don't know how he does it, because they can get a bit fraught, and I really do wish him well for the future. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I would echo what's been said. I was on planning committee for a long time. Obviously, I'm back on there now, although owing to work commitments, I can't be there tomorrow. But if I assume David will be there, so if you would also pass on my thanks for his hard work over all the years and what an excellent job he's done through all those years.
Thank you. Councillor Dale.
Just to echo again on behalf of the Conservative group, if you could please pass on our thanks to Adrian and obviously very best wishes for his retirement. It's certainly been a real font of advice and wisdom for me with any planning application that comes forward. It's always easy to get hold of him, have a chat with him, understand a bit better from the planning services perspective. So thank you very much to him.
Thank you, Councillor Dale. I think I can say on behalf of the whole council to express our gratitude towards Adrian and all the hard work he's done over the years. I know certainly in my time when I've had to deal with planning, he has been an absolute font of knowledge and always explained and put it in real terms in a way you can understand and take away and be able to explain to residents as well. And so for that, I can just say, would like to say thank you, and I hope he enjoys his retirement. With that, we close the annual meeting, and I would like to open the ordinary council meeting for today. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. Do we have any other apologies for absence? Councillor Lacey. Oh, nope. Nope, no additional.
No.
Okay, moving on. Item 2, declarations of interests. Are there any declarations from members in respect to items on this agenda? Nope, thank you. Item 3 is Chair of the Council's announcement. You'll be probably gratified to hear that I have no announcements today, as it is my first day as Chair. I may have some announcements for the next meeting, but not this one. So we'll move on to item 4, Leader of the Council's announcements, and I invite the Leader of the Council, Nigel Barker, to speak.
Oh, thank you, Chair. That's come round quick. Thank you. I think just before, because it is the annual meeting and one thing or another, any formal business, I just thought it would be worth taking a few minutes just to go through what we've done over the last year. And I think, first and foremost, I think the opening of Claycross Active has been a big success. And again, it's a joint thing, I think, that we've all worked towards that. And also the other leisure centres are proving popular. I think we're doing well. I think we've continued to work with Ricknell to build and acquire more social houses, and we're also continuing to deliver improvements to the existing stock, which is helping to reduce energy costs for our tenants. We've introduced the new weekly food waste collection service, which has been quite a project, I think, to get that up and running. We've supported local businesses to start and grow and recruit through new commercial space. We've targeted business support, haven't we, Matt, and that? Jobs fairs and active partnership working. We've launched Pride in Place programme, which is going to bring £2 million a year investment into bits of our communities. We've continued to push forward with the regeneration of Clay Cross, including the new business space and improvements to Market Street. There has been challenges along the way, as we're all aware, but we are getting there. We're all working up a new generation of regen opportunities to bring forward jobs, homes and investment. We've got a plan, haven't we, Matt? We've also made good progress on the local plan. We've given residents the opportunity to have their say on how the district should grow and develop over the next 20 years. We've also had some discussions about the use of local community assets. That's a lie, though, in case anybody missed it. We continue to collect the bins, cut the grass, tackle fly tipping, antisocial behaviour and consult on regular basis with communities. And there's a lot more. And I think, fair enough, this doesn't happen by chance. So it's an opportunity to thank all the officers for the commitment and professionalism. And also, I'd like to thank you in this room. I think we're all there. We're all trying to make North East Derbyshire a great place to live, work and visit, as we say in as papers. And I think we're doing a decent job on that. I'll just, and obviously that's reflecting back, but I think we need to look forward. I always look forward to mentioning local government reorganisation. So I think it is sort of still in the forefront of our minds. It has been a bit of a lull because of waiting for the government, but the consultations happened, and it will represent the most significant change, I think Mark alluded to it, to local government for over 50 years. And at this stage, I still think there's a degree of uncertainty. Government have still got to make a decision. They might proceed with it, they might not. They might create a single council for all Derbyshire. They might have two councils. Where they draw the line, we don't know. And they might even bring forward an alternative model. They might have a plan of their own, we don't know. So hopefully by end of June, maybe, early July, we'll have some clarity on that. But we've got to be prepared for whatever's coming down the line. And I think there has been a lot of work in the background, Matt, hasn't there? And all 10 councils now across Derby and Derbyshire have got a shared programme management thing. There's lots of different groups meeting on teams on a regular basis. And I know we've got our best people, I can say that, eye up in all that, those working groups to influence what comes next. We've got all the right people in the right places. I can make a joke out of that, but I'm not going to. But I think we're now entering a very important phase because we've got to really now start focusing in on what we need to do on day one to make it safe and legal. And that means that we've got to still provide services that operate effectively, like we've said. All the governance arrangements are in place, and residents should be able to experience a smooth and stable transition. Because the fear is you take your eye off the ball, as they say, off the day job, and then you end up in limbo. We can't afford to do that. We're still doing all those things I've just said, but we are moving towards something different. And I think that's the main thing. We've got to focus in on still delivering for our residents. We've got to have all the everything in place, but we've got to prepare for that, what's coming down the line. And I know Matt and Jane and others are working on top of the day job to he's laughing at that. It's not fun. But that's where we are, and I'll not do my joke, Sarah. I'll leave it at that. Thank you. That's an in-joke. Thank you.
I heard it. It was terrible. Moving on then. Item 5, public participation. I've received no public questions, so I'd like to move straight on to item 6, Auditor's Annual Report 2024 to 25. I'll hand over to Councillor Pat Kerry in order to be able to speak on this. Pat.
Thank you. I've now managed to press the right button. There's only a choice of two, but you always choose the wrong one first. This report asks the Council to note the External Auditor's Annual Report for the 24-25 from Forvis Mazars. The report summarises the independent work on our 24-25 Statement of Accounts and our value for money arrangements, and sets out any wider matters the Auditor is required to report. The report is appended here, but I'm pleased to report that the accounts were unqualified and no significant risks were identified. The recommendation is that the Council notes the Auditor's report at Appendix 1, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a mover and seconder?
I moved it. I'll second.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? No? In which case, we can move to a vote. All those in favour, could I have a just show of hands? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. Item 7, that is passed, by the way. Item 7, our local plan presentation. I'm going to pass over to our Assistant Director of Planning to discuss this. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Chair. I think Amy's just getting the presentation up, hopefully.
Thank you. Members, we'll just wait a moment until the presentation is up. If it's going to come up. Ah. One moment, please, councillors. Yes, that one.
Can I do my job now?
No. Excellent. Correct cable.
Thank you, Amy. Apologies for that, members. So, yeah, the purpose of the presentation is effectively to bring members up to speed with where we are in progress in the emerging local plan. Amy, if you wouldn't mind, next slide, please. So, just in terms of the things we'll talk about today, so again, talking about the overall timescales and why we're moving at the pace that we are. Some reflections on the refined sites consultation. So that was the consultation that members will be aware concluded at the back end of April. A review of where we are in terms of kind of key evidence gathering, which needs to be concluded by this summer, basically end of July 2026. Talk a bit about the public consultation on the draft plan, which will be later in the year, and use of focus groups again to further engage members of the public as well as members and parish councillors in the kind of evidence gathering and trying to draw conclusions from that evidence as best we can. And then the key messages, which just to stress, are from a kind of technical officer perspective, but hopefully give members some kind of context in terms of why we're doing what we're doing. Thanks, Amy. So yeah, in terms of the key timescales, so as I say, progression towards the submission of a draft local plan by the end of 2026. So that is a deadline set by the government in terms of plans being able to be assessed under the current system. In short, that's the quickest route to getting a plan in place, hopefully. So that's why we're moving for the end of 2026. But key factors in that are that fairly soon the council is not going to be able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and what that means is that the weight to be given to policies in the current plan is going to reduce. The reason why we're quite certain on the July date is because, in accordance with national policy, basically there's a buffer that applies to your housing target. So we know that we won't be able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply at that point. So effectively, the sooner we get to the point where we've submitted a draft plan, obviously it needs to be examined in public, but as that process unfolds, hopefully from relatively early in 2027, we'll be in a position to start giving weight to those emerging policies and protect the council against the impact of unplanned development and all of the unpredictability and lack of infrastructure that can come with that. Next slide, please, Amy. So in terms of the time frame, obviously it isn't that long until the September draft consultation. So when I say halfway in the process, we effectively wanted to use the recent consultation to make the public aware of effectively where we've got to as officers from the position that we had last summer, which was basically the full list of, well, when I say the full list of sites, a list of sites that could have potentially accommodated 30,000 houses, and we were at 19,000 in the recent consultation. The main reasons for removing sites at that stage were things like flood risk. We've still got to conclude the Greenbelt assessment. So the consultation was at that sort of midpoint of funneling down towards the target, which is circa 12,000, so 600 a year over a 20-year period. And that last point is just important in that sites that the council officers have assessed to be not suitable at this stage aren't necessarily completely out of the equation, in the sense that they've obviously been promoted by somebody, and there is the possibility that those sites come back and that the promoters try and make a case for them to be included in the local plan when it's at its examination in public next year. The other key point to highlight is that there may well be some sites that have been submitted since this refined sites consultation, so since the April consultation, because we have to allow a period, and we're going to try and close this as soon as we can, that'll be July time. We have to allow the opportunity for sites to be submitted until a point where it's simply not practicable for us to be able to consider their potential impact. And that timescale does have to take into account that an examination in public will happen after we've submitted our plan. Thanks, Amy. So we had a really good response to the consultation. I don't think it would be a surprise that quite a high proportion of the responses raised concerns about, well, in particular, certain sites. And that's obviously a really understandable position. What we've really got to do over the next few months, and we are obviously on with this already, is think about the infrastructure improvements that we're going to need to make and propose alongside many of the allocations. Because as per the previous slide, we were at 19,000 in that consultation. We are reducing down still quite considerably to 12,000. So plenty of sites will come out. But we know that we will obviously be allocating site or proposing to allocate sites that will still be obviously locally controversial. So we are cognizant of that, and some of the future slides will talk about the things that we're looking at. Next slide in, please. In terms of how we tried to set the consultation out, obviously masses of information in terms of a proposed spatial strategy, and then all of the sites for people to comment on. We tried to make that as clear as possible in terms of, from a non-technical perspective, why we were undertaking the consultation, what aims were we seeking to achieve, and ideally what comments were we getting back from, did we want back from people, what feedback did we seek. because obviously the first starting point is developing a spatial strategy in terms of where to prioritise development sites, and then we were showing how the sites individually fitted into that framework. So trying to understand that obviously the requirement is for everywhere to have an up-to-date local plan. So we need to then take the housing target and look at what is the most sustainable way of trying to deliver that before we can then look at any possibility of going below that target. And I think the key point, again, we were trying to get across is that there will often be constraints to development on sites. There'll be many sites where there's potential water courses either on the boundary, within the site. There will be ecological impacts. Most sites will have some form of constraint, but what we are duty bound to obviously consider is how realistic is it to mitigate those impacts. Because when you allocate a site, obviously the policy that supports that allocation can then talk about those various elements of mitigation. Thanks, Amy. Obviously a list there of what was included in the consultation, but I think just to highlight some of the work that we've been doing. So taking the land availability assessment is simply all sites that have been submitted to us, and basically shows a record of how we've started to assess them, why we've taken some out of the equation, why the others remain in. In terms of the settlement role and function study and the hierarchy, this was basically the information that we've gathered from what are the services and facilities in each settlement, and how can we then relate that to what are the most sustainable locations within the district. Obviously, we appreciate it's a semi-rural district, so what is sustainable obviously has challenges wherever you're looking, but in terms of the highest priority we've given to development around the 4 main towns, and the potential new settlement at Duckmanton, and there are some quite large proposed extensions to both Eckington and Clay Cross, to give 2 examples, and trying to look at what is the evidence that we've got around existing services and facilities, and crucially what could we build on to make those locations more sustainable to accommodate the growth that we're being asked to accommodate. I'll pick on another 2 in a bit more detail on further slides, the economic needs assessment and housing needs. But Amy, if you wouldn't mind moving on. So the just key figures from the housing needs assessment. So this was a key part of the evidence base for all local plans. Most councils will produce these documents, and what it tries to establish is the range of housing needs in terms of not just affordable housing, but also different tenures, supported living, that type of thing, and goes into quite a lot of detail. It included a survey that was sent to 10,000 households in the district, so there is evidence behind some of the conclusions that came out of that. And as you'll see from that slide, the need for affordable housing is really quite significant in the district. Again, that's not uncharacteristic with a lot of places, because when you start looking at the issue of average incomes, average house prices, the mismatch means that a lot of people can't afford to purchase market properties, and therefore we need to be grappling with these types of issues. In terms of the overall target that we're looking at, that's circa 600 a year. So the likelihood that we'll be delivering those 350 odd properties per annum, we will probably be coming lower than that, because it's only in areas that are removed from the green belt that we'll be looking at anywhere near 50% affordable housing provision. But the purpose of including those stats is to demonstrate that whilst obviously there are a lot of concerns quite legitimately about the potential impact of some development sites, we have also got a need that the local plan will need to address, and we're going to be examined on how is the local plan meeting these needs. The economic data is there in terms of the larger sites. Some of the evidence that we're looking to develop is not just in relation to the kind of strategic warehousing and sheds, but can we improve the position in terms of employment how that's featured in the local plan. So the current plan is quite heavy on the strategic allocations, such as the avenue here, for providing employment sites. But given the challenges to town centres and the need to try and make sure that with a significant increase in our housing target, we also have a sustainable solution. What are the opportunities for employment in the smaller settlements and on a smaller scale than we've probably got planned for in the current plan? And then just in relation to Gypsy and Traveller accommodation, most of the sites that were put forward last summer as potential Gypsy and Traveller sites haven't actually moved forward because, as the slide indicates, we've pretty much met our need in that respect. Next slide, please. So work that's ongoing. So strategic flood risk assessment, this was something that we engaged parish councils in terms of trying to get local information into what is obviously quite a technical document. And then I think the other point to highlight there is around biodiversity and the partnership that we've got with the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, looking at the how we achieve 10% net gain on larger sites, but also critically offsetting opportunities. So where a developer legitimately makes a case that they can't provide biodiversity net gain on site, that is offset within the district, so the district benefits in that respect. And then the last point about design codes, this is about trying to make sure that we have clear guidance on the standard of development that we want to bring forward. It will link to things like the policy that we have on housing mix within schemes, but it will give us a more robust design basis on which to assess planning applications. The successful places guidance is used pretty successfully. We've had appeal cases in Dronfield, for example, that have indicated the value of that in the planning process, but to produce a design code will basically bring that more up to date, give it more weight. Thanks, Amy. So key documents on this slide in terms of the work that's still ongoing. So the Greenbelt Review, this is obviously critical in respect of looking at the overall capacity for accommodation of the 600 a year in the district. National policy requires us to look outside of the Greenbelt first, but members will be aware of the grey belt definition that's in the current National Planning Policy Framework. So what we need to establish are areas potentially of grey belt in the district, and basically make a judgment around, are there sustainable locations within the green belt that we could potentially release as development sites if we've got a strong enough case that we need to do that because we can't accommodate development elsewhere. And an example of the type of area that we're potentially looking at in that respect is the second point on there in relation to the settlement gaps. So again, I think members will be aware that round Clay Cross, for example, both north and south, there are settlement gaps identified where the purpose is, as the name suggests, to retain the integrity of separate settlements by restricting physical development in those locations. That's the type of thing that will obviously reduce the capacity within the south of the district, and therefore might push into greenbelt allocations. But this is the type of thing that we're still looking at, and to be clear, the September consultation will outline in full where we've got to in respect of that trade-off, if you like. Sustainable transport is obviously going to be key in terms of obviously we recognise the issues around the A61, the fact that you're not just going to get a new A61 as part of the local plan, but how do we best mitigate the impacts of additional transport and try and address some of the issues that we've got at the moment in terms of pedestrian connectivity, cycle connectivity in certain parts of the district where there are opportunities to reasonably connect some of these new development sites to existing infrastructure without or in a way that can incentivise non-car journeys. Then the last point in terms of town centre health checks, that links back to my point about trying to look at employment sites beyond just the allocations, and obviously think about the role of town centres kind of from a leisure perspective. Next slide, Amy, please. So work that is ongoing at the moment is about the technical constraints on a number of the sites. So to be clear in terms of the housing numbers that we're talking about earlier on, the circa 30,000 that we had, circa 19,000 in the recent consultation, they're based on broad calculations for surrounding densities for each of the sites. They need to now start to take account of landscape impacts, heritage, ecology, and other constraints that will potentially reduce the amount of houses that we will put on an allocation, or in some cases potentially increase them, because there will be some of the larger sites where actually a more dense core within the sort of central part of the development filtering out might be acceptable. So this is the type of detail that we need to be getting to grips with over the next few months, and that will then inform obviously which sites come forward to meet that 12,000 target. Linked to that, the last point being that the what national policy requires is you aim to meet your need. There are exceptional circumstances that you can potentially draw on to propose a lower number, and this links to a council motion from a few meetings ago in relation to this question about overall capacity within the district. So by the time that we've got the Greenbelt review, the settlement gap study, the transport, sustainable transport options information, that will all feed into a process which is going to be undertaken by external consultants with experience of local plan examination, but they're independent of the council, and they're not going to be given a brief other than here's the studies that are relevant to you making this conclusion. Provide us with some advice on whether there is the capacity in the district to meet that 12,000 target over the 20 years. Thanks. So just touching on what's happening in the future. So as I say, the plan is to have a draft consultation, a consultation on the draft local plan in September. Prior to that, we'll be using focus groups again. And I'm hoping that they will be around the end of June, but there'll be more communication on that soon. Continued engagement with parish councils, and as I've said there, the plan is to write to parish councils and seek any feedback they want to provide us in relation to community infrastructure and the opportunities as they see it for further provision to be made. So what could we potentially fund through new development? That's obviously not asking them to support new development that they haven't up to press, but it's just trying to get some more local feedback really on the mitigation that we're going to have to try and seek. And just the final point is that the consultation in September is the last statutory phase that we have to undertake before submitting the local plan at the end of the year. Thanks, Amy. Again, I would stress these are key messages from an officer perspective, but hopefully as I go through them it becomes kind of clear why I'm saying them. We are working at pace here. I think if we'd set an ideal timetable, it wouldn't be 2 years. You'd perhaps want longer to consider some of the information, have longer between some of the consultations that we're undertaking. I mean, just to stress that the recent consultation on refined sites isn't something we were obliged to do. We obviously wanted to do that. We needed to be clear about the scale of change that's already happened and the work that officers have been doing since last summer. But you know, we know that we're working at pace on that. We do need a plan that lasts longer than the current one. I think that's a fair point from an officer point of view to make, in that even if the housing target hadn't changed through the revisions to the National Plan and Policy Framework in 2024, the current local plan would still have largely been spent in terms of the amount of sites left to allocate. It's not much more than a handful. So in terms of looking forward, obviously it's more controversial because the amount of change that is before people is more significant. But having said that, once you've adopted a plan, you know, we'd hope that the first review at the 5-year period wouldn't necessarily be an entire new strategy, which is the position that we've got at the moment. And just that last point, again, this is from a technical perspective, but the process that we've got to go through is draft a plan that we are as confident as we can be will get through an examination process. And as part of that, we can't debate what the content of national policy is. That doesn't mean to say that that debate doesn't happen in other rooms, and it's quite right that it does so. But from an officer point of view, the plan that we submit has to be robust enough for, in our view, to be able to get through that examination process. Thanks, Amy. We obviously do need to address the issues around infrastructure. That's one of the reasons why we're making the contact again with parish councils and trying to look at more innovative ways than the current plan in terms of when we're allocating sites for housing, what else are we asking for, and making sure that we kind of push the boundaries as much as we can with that. For example, new community facilities, employment opportunities on some of the larger sites to try and make some settlements more sustainable than they are at the moment. This is in recognition of the fact, again, we know it's a semi-rural district, so there are sustainability issues with most of the district, and it's trying to address those challenges in the best way that we can. And I think we do need to be clear that if we don't progress a local plan, then we're going to be in a period where we haven't got much weight to give to the current plan, and therefore, others are going to be determining where development proposals go, and our ability to plan positively is going to be reduced. Thanks, Amy. That's in the presentation, but happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions regarding this presentation? Councillor Dale.
Yeah, thank you, David, for the presentation. Very useful. It was just a question around the that kind of process where we decide whether we go for a lower housing target or not. At what point is that decision made? Because I'm acutely conscious that you've not got many more public consultations, and I suppose then the question is also not only what point it's made, but who's it made by? Is it made by officers, or is it made by us in this chamber, essentially? Because I appreciate you've not really got that much time to be able to make the decision politically. So, yeah, if you could just elaborate a bit more on that, that would be great.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, thanks, Councillor Dale. So, by the end of July, we need to have all the technical evidence that we will have to be able to ask the consultants who are, like I said, they're going to be appointed as independent people. I think it's completely fair that rather than asking me or the team to do that, because there'll clearly be, there's value in the distance, basically. By the end of July, we will have the information, so that's the Greenbelt Review, settlement gaps, sustainable transport information. We will have that to be able to present, and like I said, we will give the documents to the consultants. We're not going to give them a steer on, we think it should be X, Y, and Z. That wouldn't be appropriate. They will make a recommendation to the council in respect of how likely is it that we'd be able to mount a case that it would be less than the target based on this evidence. The council motion was that would be reported to Cabinet. So the first protocol will be Cabinet. May well need to be an exceptional Cabinet in terms of August or so, but before the public consultation, we'd obviously need to undertake that. Then public consultation in September, and then after that it'll be a case of members having their view on the draft plan.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering if you can give us a little bit more detail on the consultation you'll be undertaking with parishes and what weight it will actually carry, because obviously a lot of them have expressed the concerns that what's reflected in the draft plan so far actually doesn't tie up with the reality of the parishes in terms of what is sustainable and what's in the locale.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hancock. So the members will district members will receive a copy of the letter that was sent to parish clerks, but essentially, it's a letter that's going to acknowledge that we're not expecting different comments on the sites that have already been submitted, and clearly we will have, we've got to have regard to those, and those comments are taken seriously. As I suppose my thoughts on this are that, given the pressure in terms of the housing target, I mean, even if it was halved, even in a scenario where it was halved and was back to pretty much the target for the current local plan, that's obviously several thousand houses that we've got to find the sites for. So recognising that there'll be some unpopular assessment to be made in that, I mean, some parish councils, I won't necessarily name them here, but some parish councils have made comments whereby they've said, we can't really support this site, but if the council was looking to pursue it, these are the types of things we'd want you to consider, and they're the things around, you know, sustainable transport, additional services and facilities for the locations in terms of more employment or more retail or whatever. But it's those types of comments that we're seeking. So, but in terms of how would they be taken forward, if we get those types of comments, whilst all that technical work is going on over the next few months, we're having discussions with the promoters on a number of the sites, and particularly on the larger ones, we need to get to a point where there's a common understanding as to what would be potentially coming forward as part of those sites. So the long and short of it is, if we get feedback from the parishes that we can use in those discussions, that's the objective.
Thank you. Councillor Birkin.
Thank you, Chair. A slight variation on a theme there, David. What sort of information and support will you be able to give to parish councils for them to consider the proposals within their area and across the board more easily, please?
Thank you, Councillor Birkin. So the letter will set out examples of the areas that we're seeking feedback on. So whether that's community facilities or employment, you know, the types of infrastructure that we, you know, obviously we've got some evidence in these areas, but the main purpose for doing it is to try and engage parish councils in the process that says, if these sites come forward, what else do we secure other than just housing on those sites that are being put forward for housing, obviously. So there will be some guidance in the letter in terms of the types of things we're looking at. But, you know, I use community halls as an example, whereby if that's something that the parish council consider is a gap in the settlement, we'll see what we can do about it. Now, I can't make any promises, and the letter will refer to this. We've got to have an evidence-based approach. We've got to know that whatever we secure through an allocation stands up to the scrutiny. If the promoter doesn't want to provide it, for example, they'll make that case in front of an inspectorate examination. We've got to make sure it's robust. But, you know, I suppose this would add evidence to what officers have already done in terms of, you know, what facilities already exist. Well, we know that, but how can we try and be a bit more creative? And I think this is it is another opportunity of front loading, if you like. The fact that more sites will be coming through the process after the plan is adopted, hopefully, means that actually we can probably ask for more in some respects. Hopefully that answers.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Rennick.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondered if you are prepared to share the whole evidence base with the general public. I'm particularly interested in the sustainable transport and the Greenbelt review, and what discussions have taken place with Sheffield City Council, because in my area we're acutely aware that we're surrounded by Sheffield development over the last decade, which is adding significantly already onto certain roads and impacts our travel plans already in infrastructure, and I'm just worried that sometimes that boundary creep gets missed.
So in terms of the evidence base, so some of the evidence base was shared in the recent consultation. Obviously more of that is underway, so there will be more evidence base able to be reviewed in the September consultation. In relation to the question about Sheffield, and the same also applies to Chesterfield, there are a number of sites on those boundaries. We need to bottom out the Greenbelt review first for most of those sites, but where we consider that they're either grey belt or of a lower value in respect of the overall Greenbelt, we'll need to have pretty detailed discussions with both Chesterfield and Sheffield about how some of those sites come forward, because some of them are quite sizable, and whilst the duty to cooperate between authorities is no longer a legal duty, what we're potentially going to be faced with is, are we meeting our own need in those sites, or are we actually meeting the need of the other authority? That's potentially an argument that they will put forward. So one of the discussions that we're already talking about as a team is that issue about community facilities and infrastructure that is potentially needed across our boundaries. Do we help provide that as part of these sites? Because from we need to bottom out the greenbelt issue, but relative to some of the other options that we've got, some of them are probably quite preferable, if you like.
Thank you. Councillor Hartshorn.
Thank you, Chair. I picked up as you were going through the report that you mentioned the evidence-based reports that you're still waiting on. Have you got any timescale on those? And in particular, the strategic flood risk assessment. I wondered if you've got any certain dates on when they will be coming out, and who you've had to do those reports. Thank you.
So the strategic flood risk assessment will be relatively soon, because that is on the verge of being finalised. If I'm honest, I can't remember who we've procured to undertake that work, but I'm happy to provide the answer after the meeting. But in terms of the other reports, the end of July is the kind of deadline, if you like. Many of them will come forward sooner than that. The Greenbelt Review, for example, we've started having meetings with the consultants, ACOM, who are doing that one, to look at some of the initial findings. So, you know, that probably won't be too far off. But basically, the end of July is the backstop, but many of them will be before then.
Councillor Dale.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to the question that I asked about the housing target, assuming then that the consultants come back and say, we do think there is an argument to be made for a lower housing target, presumably by that point you will have worked on the basis of 12,000 homes, and you may then be faced at kind of the last minute, just prior to going to consultation, with a view that actually we could have less. So you need to reduce by 30%, 40%, 50%, whatever it is. How do you go about that process? Do you run those sites back through the settlement hierarchy? How do you choose which sites you remove and which you keep in the plan, I suppose?
Yeah, I think the honest answer is that will present us with quite a challenge. But we are required to demonstrate why we can't meet our full need first. So we have to do it the way that we're doing it. But yeah, obviously, if there is a legitimate case to be made, it's then going to be about how, exactly as you say, how do you then follow through with those sites? So the starting principle will be the hierarchy in terms of, because we'll have all the Greenbelt information by then. So the four main towns, the potential new settlement at Duckmanton, and the strategic sites, including south of Eckington, south of Claycross, they would remain in the position kind of as long as possible, if you like, as the first part of the hierarchy, and then you're basically going down through the size of settlement after that. So you try and, it'll be a case of applying the same hierarchy, but potentially to fewer sites. Undoubtedly, that is where the challenge around a short time frame is really going to bite, undoubtedly. So yeah, we would face quite a challenge at that point, but we do have to do it the way that we've done it, in the sense that you have to demonstrate you can't meet your need first.
Thank you. Councillor Rennick.
Just wanted clarification. Just to be clear, on terms of the evidence base, will councillors get full access to all the evidence and absolute transparency in the decisions that you're making on this plan? And could we actually have a meeting to go through? Because I feel I've, get as much, I get more information as a parish councillor than I have actually as a district councillor, and I'd like that to be addressed in this final part of the plan, because too many residents were caught out last minute, not really understanding it, finding it too difficult to actually deal with the actual papers. And I want to make sure that we can pick up any issues for clarity, for residents to fully engage at the next level, which will be the last chance. And just as somebody who represents rural and farmers, can we also make sure that we've graded agricultural land so we know which is important prime land that should never ever be built on?
So far more of the evidence base will be made available at the September consultation. My only hesitation on that is in terms of exactly how far we've got with, so things like the transport modelling, for example, whether we've got all of the junction assessments at the start of that consultation, that still remains in the balance. So I can't specifically say that today. But yes, there will be more information made available as part of that consultation. So it's not, potentially not, but that's something that's an ongoing process. So I'm happy to make that commitment when I can. In terms of the broad commitment around engagement, we've tried to do as much as we can. There are always going to be limitations on that, but I do think the level of engagement that we've had thus far compared to previous plans is indicative that at least on some level we're cutting through more than we have previously. Notwithstanding that, there's always more that we can do, and feedback is you know, absolutely taken on board completely. You might have to remind me of the last bit of your question. Thank you. So in respect of that, the government holds the mapping system in respect of the grading of classification of land to DEFRA. So I think the other point to make, and just to be clear on, is that obviously best and most versatile agricultural land should be protected from development. But beyond that, there will always be a debate point around sustainability in terms of whether you actually accept development on land that would still have an agricultural classification that might be higher than the baseline. But the need for development is justified. So just to be clear, those records are held nationally. We will, yes, absolutely have regard to them. Sorry.
They're also held by the county. They've done a spatial plan, so it should be there as well.
Yeah, so like I say, they are a material consideration for that reason. But I know there's planning applications, for example, where we've had to dig into exactly what the land classification was, because grade 3, for example, has various subcategories to it. So there's that national database. There is obviously, yes, local information. And as I say, the best and most versatile agricultural land is protected in national policy as generally being a fairly high bar for development. Less than that, it is more open to what is the need for development versus the agricultural land.
Thank you. Is there any more questions associated with this item? No, there's no motion associated with this, so I will move on to item 8, question from members. In fact, we have no questions from members today, so I will move straight on to item 9, motions. We have one motion for this meeting, which is being proposed by Councillor Heather Liggett and is set out in the agenda. Councillor Liggett, I invite you to move the motion.
Thank you. I shan't bother reading it all out. I'm hoping you've all read it. But after just listening to David, I think this makes this more of a priority, because all I'm trying to do is protect our residents. Because due to the new local plan, I'm afraid flooding in the area is only going to get worse. And this motion is purely and simply to try and protect residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Liggett. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second, Chair. Just to back what Heather has said, and I think this is one of those things, it doesn't go wrong often, but when it does, the results are permanent and astronomical, what people are living with. So it is a case of making sure that we do have as robust a process as possible. Obviously, it's not asking us to change process, it's asking us to do a proper assessment of whether to do it, report back to Council on the implications. But I fully support the fact it is something that we need to do and move forward with. So I'm happy to second it on that basis, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Before we move on to the debate, the officers have made me aware that there's some technical issues associated with this motion. So before we move on, I would like to invite David Thompson to speak on some of the technical aspects that have been raised. David.
Thank you, Chair. This is just so members have the...
Just one moment while the microphone pops in.
Thank you, Chair. this is just some kind of background information that we felt it would be helpful for members to have whilst conducting the debate. In terms of the so the process when we have a major plan application, so that's schemes of 10 dwellings or more, 1,000 square metres of floor space or a hectare or more of land, the lead local flood authority, which for this area is Derbyshire County Council, are the statutory consultee. And then when a site is in the nationally designated flood zones 2 or 3, the Environment Agency are a statutory consultee. And the significance of a statutory consultee is that they have greater weight in the determination of plan applications. That doesn't mean that they always provide advice that then leads to the recommendation, but what it means is that if we're in a position where we refuse an application and then we're seeking to defend an appeal, the statutory status of those consultees will be given weight by an inspector. So there is nothing, obviously process-wise, there's nothing wrong with us asking for external advice. We do that quite often, and we can do it on all aspects of the planning application, but it's just to be aware that if we seek advice from an external drainage consultant, that advice comes back. We will also have to consult on those applications I've just talked about, the Lee Local Flood Authority and or the Environment Agency. And if there's any conflict between the advice that we're getting from the external consultant and the statutory consultee, we would need to give greater weight to the statutory consultee advice, because that is how the planning process needs to work, and it would work if we were to refuse an application and it was assessed at appeal. And for that reason, whilst again we could implement this in terms of getting external advice, I think the likelihood that we will be able to recoup the cost of that from an applicant is reduced. That doesn't mean that it's none, but where we get advice on certain matters at the moment and the developer pays for it are on issues like viability, like landscape impact assessment, where we have particular policies in the plan, but we don't have other consultees. So it was just to make that point, Chair.
Thank you, David. We'll now move on to the debate of this motion. Councillor Pickering.
Thank you. Are we on?
Yep.
Yep. Thank you, Chair, for that. I'll just start off. I mean, some of the things I say might have already just been said by David, but I don't apologise for that, because we know that in some quarters it's difficult getting things into the understanding of some of them, so I don't apologise for repeating some things. As has already been said, where major applications are concerned, where the site's over a hectare, it requires a flood risk assessment anyway to validate the application. And most applications for development in flood zone 2 and 3 will also need a flood risk assessment as well. And for major applications, as we've heard, the assessment's done by the lead flood authority, who are a statutory consultee. Now, Councillor Liggett, I'll just point out that it's your own reform-run county council that's the lead authority in that. And perhaps if you've got any questions about competency of those professionals to deliver flood risk assessments, you might want to direct some comments towards them. The Environment Agency are also a statutory consultee for applications affecting land in flood zones 2 and 3. So we're really well covered by flood risk assessments. The difference is the status of a statutory consultee is given through legislation, and it gives those bodies a priority role. So any consultee that we might want to do in a third party way would have no weight in a statutory role whatsoever. And you know, the statutory ones are also independent, and they'll be providing comments on documents produced by the consultant on an applicant's behalf. As I said, we could get other consultees. They wouldn't be statutory. They'd have no statutory status. And as such, any application refused based on a report that conflicts with those statutory assessments would be highly likely to lose on appeal. if there was an appeal, the government inspector would look at the information provided by statutory consultees under legislation, and that would probably rule anything third party out as far as that was concerned. And this could potentially leave us liable for tens of thousands of pounds, this consultee fees and the appeal costs if we were to lose. And legally, we've got no case to make an applicant pay for any consultees for any reviews. We should also note, Chair, that for small-scale applications, that's less than 10 houses, the drainage engineers of our own authority, the District Council, will scrutinise any information submitted and advise planning officers regarding any conditions that may be necessary. As a statutory matter, surface water, drainage, etc., is already covered by the flood risk assessment, and where it isn't, these matters are picked up by the local flood authority. Another thing that Councillor Liggett's put in. A flood risk authority is already assessment is already a requirement for a validation, and as I've said already, we can't make payment for an external consultee a requirement because there isn't anything in law that gives us the power to do so. A local policy has to conform with national policy. We can't make things up as we go along. We fully recognise the importance of learning from recent flooding events, including those at Clay Lane and Hallfield Gate Lane. In respect to Clay Lane, comprehensive post-event reviews were undertaken, and following Storm Babbitt, the County Council also commissioned an engineering review of the worst affected areas to better understand the range of contributing factors and to ensure these findings could inform a wider coordinated response. This work directly informed our decision at North East Derbyshire to initiate the development of a county-wide strategic flood group, and our officers undertook that, recognising that flood risk does not sit within a single organisation or service. Our officers led that approach, which has now evolved and been strengthened through integration into the Derbyshire Resilience Partnership. This ensures that flood risk is not considered in isolation, but is embedded within a wider county-wide resilience and risk management framework. All the points in this motion, Chair, are already being covered by planning policy and statutory legislation, and have in fact been improved by us here at North East Derbyshire. But once again, we've got reform in this motion, ignoring good practice that's already taken place and trying to pretend that they have just invented an answer. This casuistical attempt at politics makes me wonder what fly-by-night policies they might come up with next. Perhaps they might be suggesting a motion calling for a North East Derbyshire UFO watch committee.
Liggett, it's not your turn to speak, please.
In case any aliens escape from Doncaster. This motion is poorly thought out, would potentially cost us tens of thousands of pounds, and it's typical from Reform to cut taxes, claim they're going to do that, and then increase spending. It flies in the face of statutory and legal requirements. They're making things up as they go along, but that's Reform all over, leading people to believe that they can ride roughshod over rights and the law. Chair, in light of all that, I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dale, I invite you to speak, and no one else.
Thank you, Chair. A difficult one to follow that. I was actually only going to apologise for not declaring an interest earlier. I'm obviously a member of the County Council, which is the lead flood authority, but I also work in the water industry, and therefore feel I probably maybe shouldn't discussion shouldn't be part of the discussion, and yeah, and I will therefore abstain in the vote as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair.
You're on.
Am I on?
Yep, you're on.
What I'm about to say is mindful of the earlier comments that the local government reforms are well underway, and we need to start giving some thought to how we're going to fit into this, especially as we're going to be part of some form of top-tier authority, unitary authority ourselves. So there won't be a Derbyshire County Council lead flood authority. It'll come our way in one form or another. I'm also mindful of the serious flood issues which have occurred locally, and from my caseload and meetings with residents, particularly not far from here, there are serious concerns. So our group welcomes the commissioning of a district-wide flood risk assessment and the planning department's efforts to commission it, because we think that should help inform the council make better decisions in the future regarding flooding matters, irrespective of comments coming in from the higher authority in the short time they will be available, Chair. Simply relying on the EA and DCC lead comments, or whatever you call them, statutory consultee comments, has left us exposed in the past. But I do accept that there are statutory constraints where we must take those comments seriously. So what this group proposes is a friendly amendment, or series of friendly amendments, probably too many to read out now. The main one, which is to note the emerging, or main ones are to note the emerging flood risk assessment and welcome that. But the last one, which we would like to add, because we too have concerns that developers will resist paying for a further independent assessment. They will challenge us and say that the statutory consultations are provided, whatever it has. The flood risk assessment they've already paid for, that won't be cheap. So what we think is, if Councillor Liggett will accept it, is to assess where we would like it to go to an urgent scrutiny review, and to assess whether the additional capacity and expertise is required, possibly in the form of a flood risk consultant to be appointed within the planning team, to better equip the authority to respond where a flood risk is a significant consideration. I can provide roughly sketched out amendments to the other words if that main principle is accepted, Chair. If not, there's no point reading it all out. Thank you.
Fair enough, Councillor. Councillor Liggett, as you are the proposer, you can say whether you wish to accept or decline the friendly amendment at this point.
I would accept the...
Would accept the friendly amendment. So can we just, before we proceed, seek clarity as to what exactly the amendment is, so the officers can record that?
Excuse the scroll. Can you read all that? Does it make sense?
We will take a moment to let the officers read.
Through the chair, I'd still would like to reply if that's okay.
If it's a friendly amendment, I believe, do they have the right to reply to a friendly amendment?
Not at this point, Chairman, but you will have a right of reply at the end of the debate, and that's when you should bring it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
One moment, please, councillors, while the officers read through the friendly amendment, please. Thank you. Councillors, as the officers are taking a good few minutes to do that, I would like to propose that we have a short recess in order for everyone to get a drink of water or go to the loo, and then we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
solicitors explained that before today.
So, can I have to come from home? All right. Well, I wanted to say my
Steve.
Yeah.
We'll let you get on with it.
Yeah. We've accepted the amendment already, but I think what we're doing is we're moving to defer because they'll look back on technical information from the officers and they've got no leg to stand. Like we've got no leg to stand on, that's their grounds on doing it. We have to reword it. So if we move to defer it, we can amend it and actually take that out. And we can make it a stronger, yeah. So my idea was have the debate, but then move to withdraw it and do the same things. They have to reject it for hit the 6 months rule. So if we move to defer or withdraw and rework on it,
we'll start on it back then.
Yeah.
Councillors, thank you. I'd like to reconvene this meeting now. If you could take your seats. So, to recap, we're at item 9, motions. At this point, I would like to bring in our officer, Sarah Sternberg, to explain what has been included in the friendly amendment.
Thank you, Chair. We had some of the parts read out, but what I want to do is read you the whole of the suggested recommendation as amended. Accordingly, Council resolves to undertake an urgent scrutiny review to consider the following. 1. Request that for major planning applications where flood risk is identified or there is local concern, flood risk assessments are subject to review against the emerging flood risk assessment. 2. Ensure that such reviews consider surface water flooding, drainage capacity, cumulative impacts and climate change allowances in line with current guidance. Delete the current 3 and then move on to number 3. Ask officers to review flooding cases including Clay Lane and Hallfield Gate Lane to identify any lessons learned to inform future decision making. 4. Welcomes that the strategic flood risk assessment for the district is nearing completion, as this should help council better understand flood risk and improve planning decisions. 5.
You okay then?
5. I am okay.
Yep.
Can't read my own writing. And assess.
Like a bonus.
As long as I don't have to read it twice.
Yours is on.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yours is.
I'll carry on then with 5. And assess whether additional capacity and expertise is required, possibly in the form of a flood risk consultant within our planning team, to better equip the authority to respond to applications where flood risk is a significant consideration. And 6 remains, report back to council on practical, financial, legal implications of implementing this approach. Councillor Baker, is that correct?
Thank you.
Councillor Liggett, that's what you're being asked to accept as a friendly amendment.
Are you happy to accept that friendly amendment before we proceed? You can just give us a nod if the microphone's just give.
I'd like my right to reply first, if that's possible.
You can't on
No, it would have to be a full amendment. A friendly amendment, you either accept it, yes or no.
No.
You do not accept it. In that case, Councillor Baker, do you wish to propose this amendment?
No, Chair.
Okay. In that case, we will carry on. Do we still have technical issues with the microphones?
Sorry, Chair. Have I made a technical error? This is beyond my experience. I may have made a technical error there.
Go ahead.
I do want to propose it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Seconder.
So now I require a seconder for this amendment.
Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones, yes. So we have the amendment moved and seconded. We now, as the debate, yes, I'll untie my tongue. We have the debate on the amendment. Now, I will proceed as I have here, and then after that, if I could just, if you wish to speak, have a show of hands, and I'll catch your attention and I'll make a note of you until we have the microphone back. But with that, Councillor Stephen Reid.
Just, Chair, if I might, just before Councillor Jones seconded it, he needs to have his opportunity to speak seconding it.
My apologies. Councillor, please proceed.
Yes, I would like to speak.
We do have some technical issues. If you could just speak up.
I understand what Councillor Pickering has been saying. I appreciate all the issues he's made. However, you have to deal with a planning application in detail to understand the problems you have. There are many problems. The consultees, the committee consultees, they do not respond in a very detailed manner. It is always very cursory. And you really need to look at this in more detail. And the amendment will allow us to do that properly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Councillor Rowe down on my list.
Thank you, sir. I just, not necessarily to do with the motion and the amendment, but I'm disappointed that 2 hours and 18 minutes into the grand speech about respect soon got kicked into touch, didn't it? I think the behaviour for the last 20 minutes has been appalling, absolutely appalling. I want it on the record. They're my views, and I know the views around this room as well. Disgusting, absolutely disgusting from that to come to that side. Terrible. That's say no more. Thank you.
If we could return to the motion at hand, please. Councillor Shipman. On the amendment, please, Councillor Shipman.
Is the mic coming on or?
Is the mic coming on for Councillor Shipman?
Oh, there we are.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you,
Chair. Yeah, I think just adding to what Mike just said there, we are 2 hours into the meeting, and Councillor Pickering has gave his grand speech about how this motion can't be possibly accepted because this thing's already been done, this thing's out of the council's gift. But the reality is the council could make a policy that would be able to deliver on this motion. And I think during his whole speech, the words probably...
Shipman, please. We're discussing not the motion, but the amendment itself.
Yeah, Chair, I'm talking about it, so if you let me finish, then we'll get to the end of that, if that's okay. But Councillor Pickering used the word probably a lot, and I think it did a lot of heavy lifting in his speech, because ultimately a statutory consultee is just a consultee. That just means that they've got to be consulted. It doesn't mean everything they say is absolutely correct. There's been many planning applications in this district where the statutory consultee have said there's no traffic issues, for example, and the government inspector has overruled that position and turned down the application on appeal. So Councillor Pickering just simply does not have a clue what he's on about when he's speaking to councillors in this chamber, saying that you have to listen to the statutory consultee. You don't. They are just a consideration for people on the planning committee and for appeals. And I, like Councillor Rowe, I find it disgusting that it's turned what looks to me to be a very non-offensive and non-political motion into a rant about reform. The only group in this council chamber today that's been political is the Labour group. So I don't understand how you can sit there, Chair, on your acceptance as Chair of the Council and give this grand, oh, we all must need to respect each other, and you've allowed
Councillor Shipman, again, I will remind you,
you
this
said you was going to be fair, Chair.
Is on the amendment.
You said you was going to be fair.
Yes,
you
and you are not discussing the amendment.
2.5 hours
you are
of taking
discussing the
chairmanship.
substantive motion.
You've not
I would
been fair.
remind you,
You've not been
or I
equal.
will cease your time.
And you've not applied the very principles you outlined to everyone in this chamber.
Right. Cut this time.
You might not
that's
like it,
Nope.
but that's a fact. And the people at home that watch this will see it's a Labour group that are being daft, as usual.
Right. Moving on. Councillor Liggett.
First of all, Councillor Pickering, as I said, I'm sorry I shouted out when I shouldn't have done, but this went in a month before I decided to become a Reform councillor. So the colour of what I was wearing that day didn't really come into it. This has come into it because I have 3 residents. Luckily, one of them has the initiative, and I'd like to thank David as well for helping me on this. It has cost the council money, this has. It's cost the council money in time going out with sandbags to help my residents. It's cost councillor time in officers' work trying to help me. And as far as the county council, I have dragged them over the coals, I can assure you. I've had meetings at the county council, I've gone to Matlock, I've had numerous meetings, I've been out on site, I've been out with the drainage guys with the cameras down, etc. And I have 3 residents at the moment that are only not underwater because one of them has purchased 2 industrial pumps and is running them 24/7 to stop the floodwater entering their houses and piping it into the main sewer. One of these residents is 89 years old, and the only way it stops her being flooded is the manhole that is 2 feet from her back door has been lifted up and a bench put over the hole so she doesn't fall down it. This is what we're talking about, and it shouldn't matter how much it costs. I'm just wanting to protect residents, and that is where this has come from. Thank you. Can I, before I get switched off, can I defer this motion so that we can all sit down and discuss it properly and bring it back?
Well, Councillor Liggett, at the moment we're actually discussing the amendment. There was initially a friendly amendment that you have said that you didn't want to accept. So this is the motion for Councillor Baker's amendment rather than your initial substantive motion. If you wish to withdraw the motion itself, you can do, but if you wish to discuss the amendment of Councillor Baker, which is what we're discussing here, you are welcome to use your remaining time to discuss that. Okay. At the end of this amendment, once a vote is passed, you will still have, as the person who raised the motion, the right of reply on the main substantive motion. Thank you. So, yes. Just to clarify for you, Councillor Liggett, under 12.8, withdrawal of motion, a councillor may withdraw a motion which he or she has moved with the consent of both the meeting and the seconder. The meeting's consent will be signified without discussion. No councillor may speak on the motion after the mover has asked permission to withdraw it, unless the permission is refused. So if you wish to withdraw that, you may withdraw the motion completely if you wish to do so now. Well, the whole motion failed. The whole motion stops, as well as the amendment. You would like to.
Seconder, okay with that?
Councillor Hancock, do you agree to this motion being withdrawn?
Just for clarity from, because I've not got a copy of the Constitution in front of me, that withdrawing it at this stage doesn't fall foul of the 6-month rule.
No, it doesn't. It has to be rejected.
In that case, I'm happy to.
Yep. Motion. The motion has been withdrawn. For clarity, under the Constitution, 13.2, motions previously rejected does not apply in this matter if it has been withdrawn. The mover and seconder have withdrawn this motion, so the amendment automatically fails, and that is the end of this motion. As we only have one item on these motions, I will move on, because there's no more debate on this, I'm afraid, councillors. I know there's a list of those who wish to speak, but the motion has ended. Of course. I'll pass over to the officer to answer that.
Sorry, I'm not quite. I'm obviously a long day, so I'm not quite clear. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I entirely agree. And you may notice from the constitutional arrangements you proved earlier that I now have power to do that in the future, to go and talk to the member and make sure the technical issues are dealt with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10, urgent business. I have no urgent business, so that concludes this meeting. Thank you all for attending.